I'm going to have a baby. We've always wanted kids since we got married. I happily shared the news with my husband, Bob, expecting him to be thrilled, considering all the challenges we faced. But his reaction caught me off guard. It felt like I had been pushed off a cliff. My name is Catherine, and I'm 40 years old. Bob confessed his feelings to me, and we got married when I was 30. I'd always dreamed of having a happy family, surrounded by a loving husband and smiling children. Despite my serious nature, I hesitated to get into a relationship, and before I knew it, my 20s were almost over, making me increasingly anxious. Both my sisters were already married, adding to the pressure. When Bob confessed, I quickly responded, and we started dating. We worked together, and since I knew Bob's personality from our interactions, I felt positive about him. Despite only dating for a year, I was drawn to his cheerful and easygoing nature, something I lacked. Believing we could complement each other well, we decided to tie the knot. I'm usually overly optimistic. I think we need someone serious like you, Catherine. I believe with you, we could lead a stable life and make a great couple. Hearing these words from Bob meant a lot to me, as I had always been a bit self-conscious about my serious nature. While we weren't head over heels in love, I could confidently say there was love between us, and I believed we could have a happy married life. After getting married, we both had jobs. Being in our 30s, we decided it was time to think about having children. Since we held senior positions, our salaries were quite high. We had our hearts set on having 2 children and eagerly looked forward to the day they would become part of our lives. Until then, we committed to working hard to secure a good future for our family. However, even after 2 years of marriage, I wasn't pregnant. In the first year, we shrugged off the disappointment, reminding ourselves that having a child is a blessing that can't be rushed. "We've only been married for a year. Let's not hurry things," Bob would joke, lifting my spirits whenever I felt down. So at that time, I believed it would happen soon and looked forward to it without anxiety. However, as the second year passed, the reality that I still wasn't pregnant began to weigh on us. Bob, too, became somber, expecting that by now, we would naturally have a child. Our shared anxieties led to disagreements, and heated arguments became a part of our routine. Considering our age, the fact that we hadn't conceived yet was concerning. Bob suggested we get checked out at a hospital once we cooled off from our argument. I agreed, thinking it was a practical approach. Both of us underwent tests, and fortunately, there were no health issues, easing my worries about potential fertility problems. The doctor suggested it was simply a matter of timing, so we continued our efforts, diligently following any advice given. Despite our efforts, tensions increased, and arguments became more frequent. Our home, once envisioned as a happy, smile-filled place, now had minimal interaction. However, I refused to give up, believing that once we had a child, the life I had imagined would become a reality. Finally, after 10 years of marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. While my sisters had already started their families, and I had been envious for a long time, now I too was expecting. The moment I heard the test results, overwhelmed with joy and the realization of a long-held dream, I broke down in tears for an extended period. The inability to conceive had been a source of sadness, but now I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. Though we initially wanted 2 children, at this point, I was content with just one, as long as the baby was born healthy. That was all that mattered as I lovingly caressed my belly, wishing for a healthy child. After leaving the hospital, brimming with happiness, I couldn't resist grinning as I immediately called Bob to share the news. However, it appeared he was at work and abruptly ended the call, seeming a bit curt. I felt the twinge of guilt for calling during work hours and realized my excitement got the better of me. So I decided to wait and tell him about the pregnancy when he got home and had a chance to settle down. "I had a checkup today and learned I'm pregnant. We're finally going to have a baby." I intended to deliver the news calmly, but my happiness overflowed, and I excitedly shared it with him. After a decade of wanting a child and now being pregnant, I expected him to be thrilled. However, his reaction didn't align with my expectations. "Really? At our age?" He seemed irritated, adding, "Do you even realize how old you are? You're 40, right? There are risks with having a child at this age." The doctor had mentioned this, but I was assured that with proper precautions, everything would be fine. True, having my first child at an older age presented challenges, but I was prepared for it. I had made up my mind to have this baby. Upon expressing my feelings, my husband only appeared more upset, saying, "Raising a kid at 40, and we don't even know if the baby will be born without any health issues. It might have disabilities." He believed that with advanced maternal age, only children with problems are born, and he didn't want to deal with caregiving. He argued that he wants care in his old age but doesn't want to be burdened with taking care of a child with special needs. It felt like he saw our child as merely a convenient tool. "It's your child too, you know? How can you say such things after all we've been through? We're finally blessed. Aren't you happy?" I retorted in frustration, expressing my commitment to cherish our child, disabilities or not. In his anger, he blamed me for the delayed pregnancy and even threw out the suggestion of divorce. "That's it. Let's get a divorce." Initially, I struggled to comprehend my husband's words and instinctively asked him to repeat it. Why would such a comment follow the joyful news of my pregnancy? What did he mean? He then proceeded to express his dissatisfaction with our life together. Now at 40, he felt the pregnancy was overdue. My constant seriousness, which he once thought suitable for marriage, now seemed like a mistake. My husband's harsh words hurt, but some of them strangely resonated with me. Over the past decade, I had noticed issues with his character despite being initially drawn to his cheerful nature. I had planned to overlook these flaws and continue our life together, but now it seemed impossible. He tended to take things lightly, and his cheerfulness had turned into frivolousness. Quarrels over various matters, not just the child, had cooled our marital relationship. I sensed a misalignment in our values, and this incident solidified my realization. I wanted a child, so I endured our differences, but now I think it's enough. I'd rather not have a father who doesn't cherish his child. When he insisted on the divorce, I agreed. A week after confirming the pregnancy, our divorce was finalized. During this process, my husband demanded alimony, claiming I had wasted 10 years of his life. Legally, there was no reason to pay him. In fact, I countered that if anything, I should receive alimony. He seemed to abandon that idea, but then he refused to pay child support. Initially, I wanted him to contribute for the sake of the child, but his stubbornness made it challenging. Frustrated and wanting a quick separation, I decided to seek child support under the condition that he would have no contact with the child. In terms of our assets, since we both worked and split monthly expenses evenly, and we rented our home, there was no property division. This allowed me to take all of my savings without any dispute. Knowing that he had spent a significant amount on his hobbies, keeping the savings private was crucial. Although I never disclosed the exact amount, he agreed to forego property division swiftly. I had been prudent with my savings, providing me with a sense of security that they would last about 5 years, even if I couldn't work post-divorce. Packing my belongings, I promptly returned to my parents' home in Nebraska, where both were in their 80s but in good health. They warmly welcomed me back, expressing joy about my pregnancy. Despite the disappointment from my ex-husband, witnessing my parents' happiness finally brought me relief. I was determined to ensure the safety and well-being of my child. My son was born without complications, alleviating my concerns about giving birth at an older age. He was a healthy boy without any disabilities. My siblings, who already had families of their own, also provided care. With the support of my parents, raising the child went smoothly, and I named him John. Having left my previous job, and with financial help from my severance and parents, I focused on raising John. Until he turned about a year old, I later found a new job. Despite being busy and often tired, all my free time was dedicated to John. His smiles rejuvenated me, and although he was a bit introverted and quiet, he loved it when I read storybooks to him. Showing enthusiasm for learning even at a young age, he eagerly started learning letters when given a workbook at age 5. worried that his seriousness might hinder making friends in elementary school. He surprised me by joyfully attending school and playing with friends after classes. John wasn't initially very athletic, but in middle school he developed a dream for his future and underwent significant changes. Determined to overcome his weaknesses, he became more passionate about his studies. I worried about his intense focus, but as time passed, he not only improved physically but also joined a sports team in high school, eventually winning awards in competitions. Witnessing him, once not very athletic, shine in competitions filled me with pride. In college, he excelled in both academics and sports, becoming more sociable and enjoying time with friends. He seemed to be a well-rounded individual both personally and in terms of capabilities. I felt there was little for me to worry about, that I remained vigilant and ready to support and protect John if needed. Fortunately, for now, it didn't seem necessary. Finally, he landed the job he always wanted and moved out, but we kept in regular touch. Occasionally, he visited with gifts, helped around the house, and remained considerate. He turned out to be a wonderful son. Despite not being the best father, he grew up to be a remarkable young man, and I couldn't be prouder. After 25 years since the divorce, I turned 65 and retired. I had worked hard to ensure I wouldn't be a burden on my son in my later years. Despite retiring, I remained energetic and planned to keep working. When I shared this with my son, he wanted to properly celebrate my retirement and upcoming birthday, suggesting we go out for a meal. Aware of his busy schedule, only in his second year at work, I told him that the thought alone was enough. However, he insisted, saying, "I owe you a lot, Mom. I've gotten used to work, and I've got more time now. Don't worry about me." Since high school, he had consistently expressed gratitude and thanked me for everything. Each time, I was overwhelmed by how wonderfully he had grown. Starting work seemed to have given him a renewed sense of gratitude. "You faced challenges as a single mom, but you always supported me in everything I wanted to try. Thanks to you, I'm living my dream now." My son expressed his gratitude, feeling that he had a comfortable childhood despite the struggles. It felt like something any parent would do, but hearing his appreciation, I couldn't refuse. Overwhelmed with emotion, I agreed, and we planned to have dinner at a restaurant he had booked, followed by shopping for my birthday present. I looked forward to the day. On the chosen day, I dressed up a bit and went out with my son. We strolled to the restaurant, chatting happily, and I felt proud looking at my grown-up son. Raising him on my own was a decision I made, with support from my parents and siblings making it bearable. He used to be so small, but now he had grown significantly, I thought, looking up at my son who was now taller than me. Over time, his face had matured, and as I noticed the passing days, I felt happiness. But then, I suddenly felt like a bucket of cold water was thrown over me. "Catherine, long time no see." Initially not recognizing the voice, I realized it was my aged ex-husband. He was with a woman who looked younger than him. From a distance, he called out and deliberately approached us. "What do you want?" I responded coldly, not wanting to engage with him on that fine day. After our divorce, we hadn't communicated at all, so I wondered what he wanted now. As I looked at him skeptically, my ex-husband came closer, took a long look at me and my son, and then laughed mockingly. "You still have that sour look on your face," he said. "Is that the kid we had when we divorced? Still taking care of him, huh? Good for you." Assuming our son had some disability, he began bragging about his own life without being asked. He informed me he had remarried soon after our divorce and now had a daughter in college, boasting about her success in a prestigious university. He also boasted about his new wife, who was 10 years younger than him, and their quick expansion of the family. "Our marriage was a complete waste of time," he boasted, seemingly approaching me just to mock me. Though infuriated, I wanted to leave, claiming I had plans. But he wasn't done yet. Ignoring my evident annoyance, he began to mock my son. "Is he disabled and a lot of trouble? Can he even get a job? Looks like you'll have no one to help you in your old age. Tough break." While I could handle insults about myself, Insults about my son were unbearable. I raised my hand to hit him, but my son stopped me. Mom, it's not worth our time dealing with him. Let's go. Remaining calm, my son held me back, disregarding my ex-husband and showing concern for me. There was a time when my son was curious about his father. I had promised to tell him about our divorce once he was an adult, and I had. If it seemed he had decided to consider himself as not knowing his father. My son replied, "What's with that attitude towards your dad? My mother raised me. I don't have a father." This seemed to trigger my ex-husband, who hadn't been paying child support, to attempt lecturing my son. Unfazed, my son looked at him coldly and retorted, "Are you unemployed? You really are a fool, just like you look." My ex-husband responded with mocking laughter. Remaining composed, my son calmly stated, "I work as a diplomat." When he mentioned the prestigious university he attended, my ex-husband looked shocked. It was a well-known and challenging institution, recognized for its prestige. Becoming a diplomat requires significant education and a good character, making it a demanding profession to pursue. This is why my son aimed for prestigious universities, providing a better chance of achieving his goal. My ex-husband clearly hadn't anticipated this revelation, and disbelief twisted his face. Witnessing my calm son and my stunned ex-husband, I finally felt at peace. It reassured me that divorcing him had been the right decision. I was certain that if I had stayed with him for the sake of our son, it would have negatively impacted our son's upbringing. The woman accompanying my ex-husband appeared very surprised, not just by my son's achievements, but also by his appearance. When my ex-husband resumed hurling abuses, she promptly intervened. "Hey, what's up? You shouldn't talk to this person like that. Let's get going." Reprimanding her ex-husband, who seemed oblivious, she led him away. I wondered if she knew my son based on her demeanor. When I inquired, my son claimed he didn't know her. Unable to comprehend, I decided to let go of the matter concerning my ex-husband and savor the moment. Afterward, I celebrated with my son and thoroughly enjoyed the day. I thought I wouldn't have any dealings with my ex-husband anymore, but a week later he called. I hadn't changed my phone number when I switched to a smartphone, intending to keep my ex-husband's number for a while and delete it later. However, with parenting and work, I had forgotten about it completely. Surprised by the call and considering we had nothing to talk about, I debated whether to answer. Out of curiosity, wondering why he would call now after all this time, I ultimately decided to pick up. My son responded, "What's with that attitude towards your dad? My mother raised me. I don't have a father." This seemed to provoke my ex-husband, who hadn't contributed child support, into attempting to lecture my son. Unfazed, my son looked at him coldly and retorted, "Are you unemployed? You really are a fool, just like you look." My ex-husband responded with mocking laughter. Maintaining composure, my son calmly stated, "I work as a diplomat." When my son mentioned the challenging university he attended, my ex-husband looked shocked. It was a renowned institution, recognized for its prestige, even by those unfamiliar with it. Becoming a diplomat requires significant education and a good character, making it a challenging profession to enter, even for aspiring individuals. That's why my son aimed for prestigious universities, offering a better chance of achieving his goal. My ex-husband clearly hadn't anticipated this revelation, and disbelief twisted his face. Observing my calm son and my stunned ex-husband, I finally felt at peace. It reassured me that divorcing him had been the right decision. I was certain that if I had stayed with him for the sake of our son, it would have negatively impacted our son's upbringing. The woman accompanying my ex-husband appeared very surprised, not just by my son's achievements, but also by his appearance. When my ex-husband resumed hurling abuses, she promptly intervened. "Hey, what's up? You shouldn't talk to this person like that. Let's get going." Reprimanding her ex-husband, who seemed oblivious, the woman dragged him away. I wondered if she knew my son based on her demeanor. When I asked my son, he claimed he didn't know her. Unable to comprehend, I decided to let go of the matter concerning my ex-husband and savor the moment. Afterward, I celebrated with my son and thoroughly enjoyed the day. I thought I wouldn't have any dealings with my ex-husband anymore, but a week later he called. I hadn't changed my phone number when I switched to a smartphone, intending to keep my ex-husband's number for a while and delete it later. However, with parenting and work, I had forgotten about it completely. Surprised by the call and considering we had nothing to talk about, I debated whether to answer. Out of curiosity, wondering why he would call now after all this time, I'd ultimately decided to pick up. Even though my ex-husband had never met John, the extended family seemed to hold a favorable opinion of him. Discussions about John were kept from my ex-husband, perhaps out of consideration, thinking the father might not be thrilled about a potential son-in-law. However, his new wife was aware of John and had shared the incident from a week ago with her brothers. The relatives were quite angry with my ex-husband, and the woman expressed her dissatisfaction, even mentioning the possibility of divorcing him. It's not surprising. When someone verbally abuses their own child and ex-wife, any sensible person would naturally consider divorce. It seems inevitable for Bob's wife to think he verbally abused her and their daughter too. Furthermore, my ex-husband Bob, who was about to retire, had a good job opportunity recommended by his relatives. However, due to this incident, it seemed like he might lose that opportunity. On the other hand, the brother of his current wife, a big-shot CEO, seems to be doing well. Bob had gotten a job through his connections and apparently made money easily thanks to that. However, because of this incident, it seems people no longer trust him, and he might not be able to get the job he was planning on. He reached out, suggesting that our son John should help him out in his time of trouble. However, Bob, who never really cared about our child and didn't even pay child support, just wanted to use him for his own convenience. I was beyond angry at Bob's audacity. After all those hurtful things he'd said, the very thought of living with him again made my skin crawl. Despite Bob suggesting that we get back together and live with John, I firmly declined, emphasizing that John doesn't owe him anything. I don't want to live a lonely life in my old age, Bob insisted. But I stood my ground, remembering his past actions. Since then, John and I have been living our lives smoothly. When I mentioned Bob's call to John, he told me that his relationship with his boss was still good. John was surprised to find out just how much his boss wanted him as a son-in-law. As for Bob, he has been kicked out by his second wife and is now struggling. Despite his desire for a lively retirement, he seems to be living a tough life alone, jobless, and with little savings. I had stopped caring about Bob, but remembering the things he did in the past, it felt like karma. As for me, life isn't exactly as I pictured when I married Bob, but I can say I'm truly happy now. Nowadays, I'm careful about my health so I don't become a burden to John, who's working hard. I enjoy my peaceful life living alone and look forward to the day John introduces me to my future daughter-in-law. And I get to meet my grandkids. Every day, I live my life happily and energetically.